In 1966, Portugal qualified for their first ever World Cup in England that summer. And in their very first ever appearance in the World Cup, what a run they went on, finishing in third place in the semifinals under the wing of the great late Eusebio. They spent several decades in the wilderness after that before getting back in 1986, 20 years later, having a group stage exit. Followed by another 16 or so years before they got back to the World Cup again, under a golden generation, they crashed yet again in the group stage in 2002. But in 2006, 40 years on from that one-hit wonder of a third-place finish, they reached the semifinals yet again in Germany, where they finished in fourth place. And that also has proved to be their second-best ever finish, as they went out in the round of 16 just 4 years later in South Africa, and a disappointing, yet again, group stage finish in 2014. So in Portugal's 6 World Cups, they've gone past the group 3 times, twice of which they went very far, one in a modest second-round finish, and the other 3, all group stage finishes. And you wouldn't guess this from a soccer European, Western European powerhouse like Portugal. And for 2018 World Cup qualifying, Portugal actually trailed for 90% of the qualifying phase because they opened with a 2-0 loss back in 2016 to Switzerland. And it wouldn't be until the final match day, where they played the Swiss again, where they would finally overtake them on goal difference. Portugal and Switzerland each finished with 27 points. 9 wins, 0 draws, and 1 loss. But because they had scored 32 goals to Switzerland's 23 and conceded only 4 to Switzerland's 7, they went through on the final match day, grabbing a direct spot from qualifying Group B and sending the Swiss to a 2-legged playoff against Northern Ireland. Portugal are the reigning European champions, where very much unexpectedly, they went all the way in France 2016 after a really lackluster start to their tournament, where they actually drew all 3 of their group games and went through as one of the 4 best third-placed teams. They only won 2 games in 90 minutes, requiring extra time and penalties to see them through to their maiden championship, the first ever in Portugal's senior men's national team level, against the host nation in the final. Incredibly enough, when Cristiano Ronaldo had to be subbed off due to injury, where the rest of the team rallied behind and in the stoppage time won it through a goal outside the box by Eder. It was a fairy tale closure for the sadness of 2004, where Portugal hosted the European Championship and they lost in the final to the unexpected story of that summer, Greece. So how fitting is that? Well, after living in the shadow of their Western neighbor counterparts, particularly Iberian rival Spain, for many years, Portugal had secured glory of their own. And the reigning European champions head to Russia 2018 as one of the 8 seeded teams of the tournament. They are in Group B along with Spain, their arch nemesis, and Morocco, and Iran. Now, Portugal, Spain, and Morocco are actually geographically very close to each other on the map. So this presents a very interesting North African, Iberian clash going on in Group B, with Iran being the respectable outsider. Portugal will seek to advance out of the group stage for the first time since 2010 and go on another deep run as they did in 1966 and 2006, because as good as Portugal tend to be in European championships, they usually get to the latter rounds, the semifinal stage. They have kind of been hit or miss in World Cups in contemporary 21st century history. And they will love nothing more than to get revenge on Spain for elimination in the 2010 World Cup round of 16 and in the 2012 European semifinals. But their group is trickier, I postulate, more than what meets the eye, because they're coming up against a Moroccan team that is undefeated in over a year, a Moroccan team that qualified having conceded 0 goals, a Moroccan team that is managed by one of the most notorious coaches on the African continent, and an Iranian team that is coached by Portuguese man Carlos Queiroz, and they are also very defensively compact, and we know that Portugal is a team that tends to play to the level of their opponent. This may not be good. I do think it'll be a more difficult group for Os Navegadores to, well, navigate, but it's one that they probably should, on paper at least, come out of. Let's take a look at the squad. So we have goalkeepers Anthony Lopez, Beto, Rui Patricio, part of that 2016 Europe squad. Defenders Bruno Alves, Cedric Suarez, Jose Fonte, Mario Rui, Rafael Guerrero, Pepe, Ricardo Pereira, and Ruben Diaz. Midfielders Adrian Silva, Bruno Fernandes, João Mario, João Moutinho, Manuel Fernandes, and William Carvalho. And forwards Andre Silva, Cristiano Ronaldo, the one and only, Gelson Martinez, and Ricardo Quaresma. Some familiar faces here. Quaresma scored a goal or two in the European Championships in 2016. Rafael Guerrero put on a phenomenal midfield performance in the Euro 2016 final against France, was a large reason why Portugal won that game. And then you also have the seasoned leadership of Pepe at the back line. Still, I think he's one of the finest defenders in the world. Up front, it's going to be quite fascinating to see how Andre Silva really shows his worth. He plays for Milan, his club team. He's only 22, 23 years old, I believe. So how he works with Cristiano up front is going to be... I'm interested to see the dynamic, the relationship with CR7 going forward. Nani is not going to be in this tournament. This will be Nani's first absence for the Portugal national team in a major tournament in quite some time. But, you know, he was getting up there. His form was dipping. We saw it in the Confederations Cup last summer as well. It was time for him to go. I think Fernando Santos realized that. Cristiano Ronaldo, the world-class forward, possibly one of the best players of all time. He is in as chiseled of a form as ever. So how Adrian Silva and Cristiano work together, it's going to be quite a joy to watch. And also in midfield, Ruben Diaz, another influx of youth that Fernando Santos has introduced into this squad. He's only 21 years old. Or actually, no, I think Ruben Diaz is a defender. But it's good to see that this current Portugal team has a spike to it. And maybe they can go on a more convincing run than their Euro 2016 finish, where I still believe they deserve to win that tournament. But they can't afford to finish with 3 draws in this group stage because only the top 2 teams go through. On paper, it's looking like it's going to be a battle between Morocco and Portugal for that second spot. You'd think Spain are a class above the rest, though. Portugal getting a result against their neighbors in that opening match of Group B is entirely possible. I think they will get a result, actually. So Portugal will look for a top spot finish in this group. But if they're not careful, they can slip up and they can have another disappointing World Cup, which for some reason the World Cup just doesn't seem to be their forte. But when you have somebody like CR7 on your team, anything is possible.